I remember standing in the living room, the new fabric brushing my arms, trying to feel proud. Hannah's eyes slid over me like a slow, sharp knife. "Oh, that's bold," she said, her smirk soft but cutting. I froze. My cheeks burned. Bold? Was it supposed to sting? I tried to laugh it off. "Yeah, I thought I should try something different." She tilted her head, eyes glinting. "Different, interesting choice." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was shrinking. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Her gaze didn't soften. It lingered, judged, weighed. I hated how small I felt. Later, alone in the kitchen, I whispered to myself, "It's fine. She's just joking." But the words didn't convince me. That night, I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone. Old photos of Hannah came up, her at parties perfectly posed, always the center, always just a hint of mockery in her smile. I stopped at one where she laughed at my cousin Septis' outfit. The caption read, "Really? You wore that?" Her face froze in my mind. The way she thrived on others' discomfort, it was subtle, surgical, and now I realized she was doing the same to me. I clenched my jaw. Resentment flickered, sharp and quiet. The next morning, I watched her from the kitchen doorway, making toast with that casual grace she always carried. She didn't notice me, but I noticed everything. Every tilt of her head, every sharp glance, every smile that wasn't really a smile. "You know," I said, sliding into the room like I belonged there, "I wasn't trying to impress anyone." Hannah looked at me, a slow blink, that smirk teasing the corners of her mouth. "No?" It looked bold. I forced a laugh, tight and brittle. "Right, bold is good." She raised an eyebrow. "Bold can be brave, or reckless." The words felt like a test. A trap. I smiled, just enough, hiding my pulse hammering in my chest. By evening, I found myself staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror. My outfit from that morning still clung to my skin. I twisted my fingers in the fabric. Was I really bold, or just foolish? I remembered the times she'd mocked my brother too, always helpful advice disguised as teasing, and now me, quiet, deliberate jabs. She made me question myself in ways I hadn't noticed until now. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Anger simmered beneath the surface, almost delicious in its clarity. I had felt embarrassed. But now there was strategy forming. Quiet, careful. I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet, but I would. That night, as I scrolled through more photos, I laughed softly, almost to myself. It was a low, bitter sound. She never saw the side of me that plans, that observes, that waits. I realized I could use her own behavior against her. Every glance, every smirk, every little judgmental pause, she had left tracks, and I could follow them. I shook my head, trying to silence the excitement that pulsed beneath my embarrassment. The fire was small, contained, just a spark, but it was enough. Hannah didn't know it yet, but I had already started noticing, already plotting. I didn't need to rush. Quiet resentment was a slow burn, and slow burns, they consume everything in the end. The night ended with me staring at the ceiling, mind buzzing, heartbeat steady now but alive with possibility. She thought it was just a joke, a comment, a casual observation, but I had heard it for what it was. Her little smirk had lit a spark, and I knew I would never forget it. Every family gathering felt like walking through a war zone. Hannah would find a target before I even finished my first sentence. "Oh, that's bold," she'd say about my dress. "Interesting choice about my cooking." And once during my own birthday dinner, she laughed at my joke like it was a disaster. "Really? That sip's what you set you're laughing at." I froze. My fork clattered against the plate. I glanced at my husband. "Did you hear that?" He shrugged, voice light, dismissive. "It steps family teasing." "Don't step take it so seriously." Family teasing? That was what he called it. I nodded, but inside I burned. Every word, every smirk, every glance, carefully calculated humiliation. Later, in the quiet of the guest room, I whispered to myself, "She can keep doing this, not to me." I started noticing the patterns. Every time I wore something new, she had a comment ready. Every meal I cooked, every laugh I let slip, she struck. I cataloged it all in my head, like a meticulous list only I could see. At the next gathering, she pointed at the salad I had spent hours preparing. "Oh, trying something fancy. Bold move." I forced a laugh, tight and brittle. Yes, bold. She tilted her head. Bold can be ambitious, or a little desperate. My chest tightened. Ambitious, desperate. The words lingered like smoke. I clenched my fists under the table. Later, when my husband pulled me aside, he said, "Why are you so quiet lately? Yusef barely said 2 words." I forced a smile, just thinking. He frowned. "You sure it steps nothing with Hannah?" "Yes, just family." Family. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I spent nights replaying every insult, every smirk, every tiny sting. I started making mental notes, date, time, context, words spoken. I didn't write them down yet. No evidence, only memories, sharp and raw, scratching at the edges of my mind. One evening she commented on my laugh again. "You always sound so loud," she said, tilting her head, smirk in place. "It stops kind of much." I froze mid-sentence, gripping my glass. "Much?" I asked, voice calm but sharp. "Yes, much. You know, big laughs draw attention." "Attention?" I whispered, swallowing the rising anger. "Yes," she said, slow, deliberate, enjoying my reaction. "It's just bold, really. Bold. Always bold." I walked away, gripping the back of a chair until my knuckles turned white. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. This wasn't just teasing, it was control. Small, precise, psychological control. She was painting me as foolish, as the one who needed her judgment. And everyone, even my husband, seemed blind to it. I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel yet, power. Quiet, simmering, ready to ignite. I imagined tiny ways to turn her own methods back on her. Subtle, almost imperceptible. A raised eyebrow here, a tiny correction there, a hint of silence when she expected laughter. I didn't have proof. Not yet, but I had memory. I had awareness. And awareness was the first step. At the next gathering, I tried it. She leaned over my plate, inspecting my casserole, bold choice, really ambitious. I smiled, slow and controlled. "Ambitious," I repeated. "Yes, ambitious. Bold is one thing. Ambitious, that sep's better." Her smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. She blinked. "Better?" "Yes," I said, calm, almost sweet. "Ambition can be inspiring. Bold can just be loud." The moment passed quickly, but I felt it. A crack in her armor, a small victory. My heart raced, not with fear but exhilaration. Later, my husband nudged me, whispering, "You stirred different tonight." "Different?" I asked, eyes locked on the door where Hannah had just passed. "You stood your ground, quietly, but it sips there." I smiled. Quietly, yes. But my mind was already cataloging the next steps, the next subtle moves, the next strikes she wouldn't see coming. I realized then, passive revenge could be powerful, almost imperceptible, but slow, deliberate, and perfect in timing. It could sting far more than any outburst could. I drifted to sleep that night, mind alive with strategy. Each insult she hurled became fuel. Each smirk became a marker. I wasn't powerless. Not anymore. I had no proof, no witnesses, only memory, only quiet observation, only anger simmering just beneath the surface. And that was enough. Because every battle, no matter how small, mattered, and I would win them all. I walked into the cafe, my new dress swaying softly. I thought it was elegant, simple, something I could be proud of. Hannah Sepp's eyes found me instantly. She smirked, slow, deliberate, and then louder than necessary, she laughed. "Where did you even get that? A thrift store?" The words hit me like a punch. The sound of her laugh. My friends' faces frozen. It burned through me like acid. I wanted to disappear, shrink into the floor, melt into the sunlight streaming through the window. I forced a tight smile. "It's vintage," I whispered, voice barely audible over the hum of the cafe. "Vintage? Really?" Her laugh bubbled again, cruel and loud. "Bold choice. Bold and cheap looking." I felt my cheeks flush, my stomach twisting. My friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. One tried to intervene. "It looks nice, actually." Hannah turned her sharp gaze on her. "Nice? Bold, definitely. But nice? Only if Yusef got no taste." I swallowed hard. "Thanks," I muttered, my voice brittle. She leaned back, satisfied. The sound of her laughter filled the room, echoing in my ears long after. I left quickly, my chest tight, my hands shaking. The cool air outside hit me like a wave, but it didn't help, not really. That night, I stared at my reflection in the mirror, my body tense, my fingers gripping the edges of the sink, tears threatened, burning at the back of my eyes. I can stet keep doing this, I whispered to myself. I can stet let her keep winning. Something shifted inside me then, a spark ignited where humiliation had settled. I realized I didn't have to be her victim, not anymore. I thought of her closet, immaculate, color-coded designer labels everywhere, her pride, her obsession, her need to feel superior. And I thought, maybe that's where she's vulnerable. Maybe that's where the scales can tip. The idea whispered to me, soft at first, almost dangerous. Revenge. Not cruel, not public, poetic. I imagined subtle strikes, the kind that would cut at her pride without leaving a trace. A compliment disguised as critique. A small shift, a gentle jab, I could unbalance her. Quietly, methodically. I closed my eyes, breath shaky. I septum done crying, I septum done shrinking. The next brunch, I watched her from across the table. She was poised, immaculate as always, her glass raised in mid-laugh. I imagined her reaction when my plan worked. She commented on my napkin folding. "Oh, fancy. Trying to impress everyone?" I smiled faintly, slow, controlled. "Maybe," I said. "I like detail. It shows care." Her smirk twitched, tiny and almost imperceptible. I felt the thrill pulse through me, a crack. Just a hint, but it was there. Later, she reached for the dessert menu, eyes scanning. I could never pick something so ordinary. I leaned forward, voice low but steady. Ordinary can be beautiful. Sometimes it sets the subtle things that leave the biggest impact. She blinked. A pause. That split second of doubt, the first one I'd ever seen in her eyes when she tried to dominate me. I smiled to myself, quiet, inward. That's all I needed. That night, alone, I traced my plan carefully. I catalogued every insult she had hurled, every smirk, every subtle humiliation. I mapped them in my mind. Each one became a thread I could pull, each one a step toward balance. I thought about the way she measured people, weighed them against her impossible standards. What if I could make her doubt herself? Just a little. What if I could show her that pride could be fragile? I didn't need loud revenge. I didn't need to humiliate her in front of the world. Subtlety was far more satisfying, poetic even. The anger simmered, a quiet, steady flame, not destructive, strategic. My mind was alive with possibilities, small strikes that could echo louder than her laughter ever could. I remembered the cafe, the heat of humiliation, the sting of her eyes. I let it fuel me, not break me. By the time I went to bed, tears had dried. The mirror reflected not shame, but resolve. I whispered to my reflection, soft but certain, "You will see me differently soon, and you won't yet know why." A plan had begun to form, carefully, silently, in the shadows of her arrogance. I didn't need anyone else to witness her fall. I only needed the truth of my power, the control I hadn't allowed myself before. And that night, for the first time, I slept with a small, dangerous smile curling at my lips. Hannah thought she had me figured out. She thought she could control the world with her smirks and designer labels. She was wrong. And she was about to learn it. I started watching her. Not casually, not distractedly. Every glance, every gesture, every carefully curated outfit was a data point. Hannah didn't notice, that was the point. "She's wearing the new Saint Laurent bag again," I whispered to myself one afternoon, notebook in hand. Not literal, just mental notes. Brand, color, how she carried it, how she expected everyone to notice. "She must have spent a fortune," I muttered, tracing the stitching in my mind. My chest tightened, not with envy, but anticipation. Every purchase, every designer tag, was a clue. I noticed her shopping habits first. Fridays were her sacred hours, 3 boutiques minimum, coffee in hand, entourage of assistants or friends she bribed with compliments. I memorized her favorite stores. I memorized her favorite brands, every sale she bragged about, every limited edition she flaunted. At brunch one day, I leaned over my cappuccino, pretending to scroll. "So you were at Louboutin yesterday?" She froze for a second, the slightest twitch betraying her pride. Yes, limited edition. Very exclusive. Only a few in the city. Wow, must have cost a fortune. I murmured, casual, but inside my mind clicked. Not judgment, just information, observation, power. I dug deeper. Charity donations. The parties she sponsored. I asked mutual friends casually, did Hannah mention anything about that auction she attended? One friend laughed, clueless of my intent. Oh, you mean the one where she bought 3 identical handbags and never used them? I smiled. Slow, inward. Really? That much? Yes. She likes having things just because they sup her or hers. I felt a spark. Excess. Vanity, pride, and now, leverage. I started keeping track mentally. Half her wardrobe was untouched. Expensive dresses hanging like trophies, shoes lined up as if waiting for a parade. Every ignored item became a small weapon in my imagination. At another lunch I asked, pretending curiosity, which boutique has the best limited editions? I know you always find the rarest pieces. She leaned back, smirked, proud. Oh, you know me, I don't settle, only the finest. But it sups hard to find pieces worth owning. I nodded, slow, must be exhausting, keeping track of it all. She laughed, unaware that each word, each brag was threading the blueprint in my mind, exhausting for her, but thrilling for me. Even my friends unknowingly became pawns. I planted subtle questions innocent enough to sound curious, probing enough to get answers. Does she ever wear all of it? I asked one, casual, sipping wine. They laughed. Rarely. She buys, collects more than she needs, always has. I smiled faintly, inward, hoarding pride, collecting vanity, perfect. Every useless designer tag was a step closer to balance. I started imagining small nudges, subtle shifts, maybe a misplaced accessory here, a gentle critique there. Nothing public. She thrived on public perception. If I undermined that, even quietly, the thrill of control was intoxicating. The anticipation coursed through me. Each fact I learned was a thread I could pull. Each hidden indulgence became fuel. Each anecdote from friends was a puzzle piece. At dinner one night, Hannah leaned in, excited. You should see the vintage Chanel collection I got last week. Only 2 in the city. Everyone will be jealous. I nodded, calm, soft smile. You stir so committed to style. That kind of dedication is impressive. Her eyes flicked at me, a subtle test. Impressive, yes. But you notice it, huh? Of course, I said. Details matter. She laughed, leaning back, not knowing that every word she'd spoken was now in my memory, a permanent record. I realized I was no longer just reactive. I was strategic. Observation had replaced fear. Knowledge replaced humiliation. I was finally in control. Late at night, I'd replay every interaction. Every boutique, every over-the-top purchase, every brag. Mental notes became a map, a silent arsenal. I whispered to myself, quiet, thrilling, dark. I know your weaknesses. I see your vanity. And soon you shall feel it differently. The excitement was new. A pulse I hadn't felt before. Cold, precise, dangerous, but controlled, poetic. I imagined her confusion first, her subtle disorientation when she realized not everything was as perfect as she thought, her tiny crack in confidence, and the slow, satisfying realization that someone else had her measure quietly, invisibly against her own standards. I breathed in, calm, deliberate. The blueprint was complete. All that remained was timing, precision, and patience. I wasn't angry in a frantic way anymore. I was calculating, patient, watching, waiting, thriving on suspense. Hannah thought she controlled her world with designer labels, social status, and laughter at others' expense. She didn't see me. She didn't know I was gathering every piece of evidence, every little quirk, every indulgence she thought private. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The thrill of planning, of anticipation, electrified me. For the first time, humiliation had turned into power. I was ready. I was finally in control. And the thought made my pulse quicken. I walked into her apartment with a calm smile, holding a tote bag that felt heavier than it looked. I can help with the charity drive, I said. Casual, almost too casual. Hannah Sepp's eyes lit up. Really? That would be amazing. You always have such a knack for organizing. I nodded, letting her flattery wash over me, hiding the pulse of excitement beneath my skin. She chattered on, detailing her plans, boxes of clothes, accessories, bags, even shoes. She spoke of how helping the less fortunate felt like a personal triumph. Her voice dripped with self-satisfaction, each word a tiny jab at her own pride. I listened, quiet, absorbing everything. Here, can you start with these? She handed me a pile of discarded clothes. I sorted some by season, but feel free to recheck. I smiled, slow, patient. Of course. As she went on about her dinner party later that week, I turned my attention to the clothes. Each piece became a symbol, a quiet statement. What she mocked could also be stripped away. I sorted meticulously, folding, photographing, labeling each item. Designer labels stared back at me: Gucci, Prada, Chanel, Saint Laurent. All her pride, all her arrogance, reduced to fabric in my hands. This is fun, I whispered, almost to myself. But it wasn't fun, it was exquisite. A dark thrill. I made notes silently. Season, brand, condition, everything. I imagined her eyes widening when she realized the extent of what she had given away. Later she returned, radiant in her self-importance. See? Isn't set this rewarding? Look at all the good we set doing. I nodded, calm, measured. Absolutely, it's steps wonderful. She beamed, unaware that every outfit she had lovingly chosen, every accessory she had flaunted, had already been catalogued and laid out for its next purpose, hidden from her, yet part of my silent choreography. As I worked, I muttered under my breath, almost hypnotic. Everything you pride yourself on, everything you mock, it all becomes ordinary, just fabric, just threads, just objects. Hannah hummed beside me, distracted by her own reflection in a window. I can believe how much we are helping. People will be thrilled. I didn't reply. My eyes stayed on the stack in front of me. Each piece was a small victory, a subtle strike she would never see coming. By evening, the donation pile was ready. Everything labeled, photographed, and arranged. Even the most extravagant items, her prized designer jackets, silk blouses, shoes she barely wore, were there prepared for the bin. I stepped back, taking in the work. A small, quiet triumph curled in my chest. Hannah clapped her hands, delighted. Perfect! Everything is so organized. You are incredible at this. I smiled, letting her praise fuel me while keeping my own satisfaction hidden. It's nothing, I just enjoy helping. Her laughter, light and self-congratulatory, echoed through the apartment. She didn't notice me savoring the moment, didn't see the patience, the careful planning behind every fold, every label, every photograph. The thought of her seeing her beloved outfits discarded, stripped of their value, made my stomach twist. A dark delight, patient, slow, perfect. I whispered to myself as I packed up my things to leave. Timing is everything. Wait for the right moment. Outside, the city hummed around me, indifferent, unaware. I felt alive, alert. Every step toward execution felt deliberate, almost cinematic in its clarity. Later, when we delivered the bags together, she chatted with the volunteers, praising herself, basking in the glow of perceived generosity. This is why I love doing this, she said, voice airy, triumphant, feeling like we truly making a difference. I nodded, quiet, internalizing every detail, every laugh, every self-congratulatory comment, every boast about how she always did more than anyone else. In the van, I stacked the bags carefully. Designer jackets on top, shoes in pristine order, her favorite scarves, folded neatly. My fingers brushed over them briefly, savoring the knowledge that each item had once symbolized her superiority. The volunteers moved them into the donation bins without a second thought. Hannah followed, unaware, chatting about future charity galas. I watched her from the corner, patience absolute, no thrill in rushing, the real satisfaction would come later. Later, alone, I closed my eyes and let the day's work sink in. Each item in that donation bin was a symbol of power reclaimed. Every brand she flaunted, every label she loved, carefully catalogued, photographed, and repurposed. Her pride, her obsession, her vanity, they were all pieces of a puzzle I was assembling, piece by piece. And one day she would see, quietly, perfectly, poetically. I whispered to the empty apartment, voice soft but sure, this is only the beginning. The thrill coursed through me. Control, strategy, patience, every step measured, every detail planned. I had the blueprint. I had the tools. Now it was only a matter of time. Hannah thought she was in control. She thought her laughter, her designer labels, her flattery for herself could intimidate me forever. She was wrong. And soon she would understand exactly what happens when pride is used against itself. I smiled, faint and cold, the quiet triumph settling like fire in my chest. I arrived at the warehouse early, heart hammering, adrenaline sharp. Boxes were stacked neatly, volunteers bustling around, unaware. I had arranged everything. Every item she had once flaunted, her beloved designer jackets, silk blouses, scarves, shoes, placed at the top of the display pile for the donation bin. When she walked in, radiant and self-satisfied, I could see it. The casual confidence, the aura of superiority she always carried. "Here already?" she said, smiling. "I wanted to make sure everything is perfect. People will notice." I nodded. Calm, controlled. "Of course, everything set's ready." She stepped closer to the bin, clipboard in hand, her eyes widened, slightly. "Wait," she said, voice caught between curiosity and disbelief. These are mine." I didn't answer. I stayed silent, letting the moment stretch. Her hands hovered over the pile, hesitating, and then she plunged in, fingers fumbling through fabrics, searching frantically. "Impossible," she muttered. I donated this, I didn't stet. I couldn't stet." I leaned against a nearby table, arms crossed, breathing steady, watching. My pulse raced, but not with fear, with exhilaration. Her panic grew, slow, deliberate, like watching a storm gather. She flipped jackets, scarves slipping to the floor, shoes clattering. "Where did?" I carefully selected these. "They supped not supposed to." I finally spoke, soft, deliberate. "What sep's the matter?" "Something wrong with the pile." She froze, eyes darting to me. It's stets all here. Everything I thought I sorted it properly." I tilted my head, voice calm, almost whispering. "Seems like it, everything seps here." Her breathing quickened. I can believe it. How did?" I smiled faintly, inwardly savoring the chaos I had orchestrated. Every item she had once used to assert superiority, every piece she had flaunted in front of friends, now lying in the donation bin, meaningless, exposed. She sank to her knees, sorting through the piles, fingers trembling. "This is humiliating. I can stet all these my favorite pieces." "Gone?" I walked closer, slow, measured, keeping my expression neutral. "They stir helping someone. That subs the point, right?"
Charity.
She looked up, disbelief mixed with panic. "Charity, yes, but these are mine. You arranged this." I shrugged lightly. "I just made sure everything was ready for the volunteers." Her hands shook as she touched a silk blouse, then recoiled. "But I spent so much on these carefully selected. Some of them, I barely even wore." I let the silence hang, letting her feel the weight of the humiliation, the exact sting she had inflicted on me reflected back. Her voice cracked. "I can stet it stets like I am invisible. Everything I prized, stripped away." I breathed slowly, savoring the moment. The satisfaction was surreal. For once she was on the other side. She sank lower, sorting desperately, muttering to herself. This can be happening. Who?" I stepped back, letting her panic unfold fully, letting her experience the chaos of losing control, the very thing she thrived on with others. One volunteer passed by, asking, "Do you want these sorted by size?" Hannah waved them off, frantic, eyes wide. No, everything. Just stay, don't set touch." Her hands flew over jackets, scarves, shoes, fingers trembling. She had no plan, no control. She was disoriented, lost. I whispered quietly, not to her, just to myself. "Every smirk, every comment, every bit of pride, it comes back to you." Her breathing became ragged. I can believe this, my collection gone. I kept my calm, let the silence do the work. Every second stretched. I watched as disbelief turned into panic, and panic into quiet horror. She glanced at me finally, eyes wide, searching, pleading. You knew, you arranged this. I tilted my head, letting the faintest trace of a smile curl at the corners of my lips. Everything is as it should be, ready for the donation drive. She sank into the floor, hands gripping scarves, shoes dangling. I didn't stet. How? I stayed quiet, letting her panic simmer, letting her feel the humiliation she had inflicted on me over and over again. The volunteers began moving items, stacking them in bins. She tried to intervene, but her fingers slipped, scarves falling, shoes toppling. I took a deep breath, satisfaction radiated through me. Quiet, perfect, poetic. She was learning what it felt like to be stripped of pride, powerless, exposed. She muttered under her breath. I can stud all this gone. Everything I prized. I whispered, low, almost gentle. Sometimes what you hold most dear is just fabric, threads, labels. Until you realize, it's somewhat about the brand. It's sups about control. Her eyes flicked at me, disbelief, humiliation, and finally understanding. I let her flounder for a few more moments, let her realize the full weight of her arrogance, the fragility of her pride. And then, slowly, I stepped away. Calm, silent, the storm she had orchestrated for others had returned to her in full. I breathed out, letting the pulse of triumph settle deep in my chest. She had mocked me, humiliated me countless times. Now she understood what it felt like. I didn't need words. The silence spoke everything. The warehouse was loud with volunteers, the hum of activity, but in our corner, a quiet lesson had been delivered. Perfect, invisible, irreversible. I walked past her, slow, deliberate, letting my eyes meet hers one final time. She didn't speak. She couldn't. For once, she was powerless. And the satisfaction was surreal. The front door slammed behind her, hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. Hannah? My husband called, confused. Her footsteps thundered down the hall. How did this happen? I stayed seated at the dining table, hands folded, calm as ice. You put my clothes in the donation pile? She shouted, waving a silk blouse like a weapon. I looked up, soft smile, voice gentle, almost innocent. I thought you wanted to declutter for charity? Her face twisted, a mix of anger, confusion, and humiliation. I didn't stet. These were my favorites. The ones you love, I echoed, slow, measured. I thought you said helping others was important, that you wanted to make a difference. She blinked, hesitated. The words stumbled out, faltering. Yes, but these are expensive, perfect. I can spetta believe this. I leaned back, still calm, letting her rage crash against my composed silence. You must have done this on purpose, she accused, voice shaking. I didn't do anything, I said, soft. I just helped where I could. Her eyes narrowed, searching mine, trying to catch a flicker of guilt, a hint of weakness. She found none. Nothing? She spat, fury mingled with disbelief. You didn't stet. I only followed instructions, I interrupted gently, letting the irony linger. You wanted everything ready for the charity drive. I just helped make it happen. She froze, realization dawning. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Wait, you planned this? I shook my head, faint smile still in place. I didn't plan it, I just executed. Her hands trembled. Executed. You think this is some joke? Some payback? I think it's all the whole perspective, I said softly. Sometimes seeing yourself on the other side, it teaches more than words ever could. She sank onto the couch, buried her face in her hands, muttering incoherently. My husband, watching silently, finally shifted his gaze. He'd seen her tirades before, her laughter at my expense, the tiny digs that chipped away at my confidence. But now, he was seeing me differently. You okay? He asked, voice careful. I nodded. Calm. I stumped fine. Hannah looked up, cheeks flushed, eyes wide. I can believe all my favorite pieces gone. You wanted to declutter, I said, soft. For charity, isn't that what you said? Her lips quivered. I didn't expect them all. My favorites. I didn't respond. Silence was more effective than words. The power had shifted. The tables had turned. I felt it. A subtle electric shift in the air. The balance in the house had changed. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just a target for her ridicule. I was seen. My husband's eyes lingered on me, noticing the calm, the control, the satisfaction barely hidden behind my gentle smile. I can't believe you stayed so composed, he finally said, voice low, impressed. I shrugged, modestly, letting the quiet triumph settle in. Sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. Hannah Supp's gaze darted between the two of us. You both? Yes, I said softly, voice steady. I followed through, that sips all. She groaned, frustration turning into quiet despair. I don't understand why. I let her wonder. Let her feel the disorientation, the vulnerability she had so often forced me to endure. You think you can mock me forever? I asked, almost rhetorically. You think words, smirks, designer labels make you untouchable? She opened her mouth, then paused. No retort coming. I let the silence stretch. It was satisfying, painful, perfect. My husband shifted again, clearly realizing the shift in dynamic. He had always seen her arrogance, her constant need to dominate, and now he was seeing me as strong, measured, capable. She can be formidable, he murmured under his breath, almost to himself. I caught the words, nodded slightly, not prideful, just satisfied. Hannah finally stood, defeated, pacing. I can still believe this. Everything all gone. How did you? I didn't take anything, I repeated, calm. I only organized what you wanted for charity. Her hands trembled as she gestured wildly. But. I let her struggle. Let her realize fully that her pride, her control, her arrogance, none of it mattered anymore. Not in this moment. I breathed slowly, letting the quiet satisfaction wash over me. Every subtle jab, every moment of humiliation she had caused me, had been balanced. Not with words, not with loud confrontation, but with quiet, deliberate action. She sat back down, deflated, muttering under her breath. I didn't see it coming. I can sit. I remained calm, soft smile still in place. Victory didn't need celebration. It was in the shift, in the subtle recognition that the rules had changed. My husband's eyes met mine again, a small nod, almost imperceptible, respect. Awareness, recognition. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not as a target, not as someone to be mocked, but as someone who had endured, observed, and acted. Hannah didn't realize it yet, but the power in the house had shifted. And for once, I was the one quietly victorious. The room hummed with tension, a new equilibrium settling in. I had remained composed, silent, patient, calculated. And I had won. Weeks passed, and Hannah, she changed. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone could point to immediately, but small things, subtle cracks in her armor. At brunch with friends, I noticed the way she laughed a little too loudly, like she was overcompensating. She really lost some prized pieces, didn't she? One friend whispered, leaning toward another. I sipped my coffee, calm, letting the words float past, knowing she heard. Careless, another muttered. I can believe she let that happen. Hannah's cheeks flushed pink, her smile faltering. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, picking at the edge of her napkin. I caught the flicker in her eyes, the realization, the shame, the awareness that maybe pride had led to her own downfall. Later in the living room, she tried to maintain her usual confidence. I'll just replace a few things, she muttered, flipping through an online boutique catalog. Replace? I asked softly, voice almost casual. Do you really need to? She looked up, startled as if she hadn't noticed me. Well, yes. I mean, I can it. Stet's not perfect. I let her stumble over her words, letting the tension settle. Perfect. She was grasping for control that was no longer hers. At the dinner table, my husband commented casually, "You've been quieter lately." Hannah froze, quiet. Me? No. I just thinking about plans. I smiled faintly. Quiet, calculated, watching. The fire she carried, her arrogance, her dominance had dimmed. I noticed the way she paused before mocking others now. Her smirks felt forced. Her laughter didn't reach her eyes. She looked smaller, quieter, vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. One evening, she caught me glancing at her. "Why are you staring?" she asked. Voice soft, defensive. "I sup and just noticing," I said, calm. "You seem different." Her shoulders slumped slightly. Maybe I am. Things don't stuff go as planned sometimes." "Sometimes?" I echoed, letting the words linger. "Or maybe pride catches up with us." She didn't respond, just looked down at her hands. I saw it there, the flicker of regret, a shadow of the pain she had once inflicted on me. Not cruelty, not malice, just awareness. Karma settling in, quiet and deliberate. At a small family gathering, she laughed nervously, letting someone else take credit for an idea she would normally monopolize. "You know," she muttered to herself, barely audible, I really messed up this time." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Watching her own reflection of humility, small though it was reward enough. I caught myself thinking, this isn't revenge in the violent sense. No public shaming, no dramatic exposure, just natural consequences, subtle and precise. Her friends whispered more now, in ways she couldn't sop control. "She sop us off, not the same." "She seps humbled," another replied. I smiled faintly to myself. Humbled, poetic justice in its quietest form. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch her sitting alone, scrolling through her phone, a look of self-awareness in her eyes. Her pride was no longer armor. It was fragile, exposed. One evening, she muttered under her breath, barely audible, "I should svid been more careful. I shouldn't spit have." I didn't stet reply. Silence was enough. Her attempts to rebuild her image were obvious, clumsy, desperate, but the fire that once intimidated me, that once controlled the room, it was gone. I realized then that true satisfaction didn't come from confrontation. It came from witnessing the balance restored naturally. Her arrogance had its consequences. I saw the regret flicker in her eyes more often now, fleeting but undeniable. It was instead cruelty. Not really. It was karmic. And I felt calm, because every subtle humiliation she had caused me, every comment, every smirk, every tiny jab, had returned to her in the quietest, most precise way. I watched her adjust, falter, try to reclaim the respect she had lost, and I let her. Not because I wanted to hurt her further, not because I enjoyed it in a shallow way, but because finally, the scales were balanced. I had endured, I had observed, I had acted, and now, I could step back and let the quiet justice settle in. Hannah's whispers of regret, her careful steps, her smaller, quieter presence, they were enough. I felt relief, and a subtle, serene victory. I had remained composed, silent, patient. And for the first time in weeks, the house felt mine. The subtle shift in power was complete. I sipped my tea, calm, watching, waiting. And finally, content. I woke up that morning and realized something. The weight on my shoulders, the constant tension, the fear of being overlooked, the quiet bruises left by her smirks was gone. Completely gone. I poured my coffee slowly, savoring the warmth. My house was quiet, the chaos of last week's replaced by a calm I hadn't felt in years. My husband walked in, rubbing his eyes. "Morning," he said, voice soft, almost tentative. "Morning," I replied, serene. He noticed me immediately, not the me that shrank under Hannah's laughter, not the me that swallowed insults and nodded. No, this was different, stronger, sharper. "You seem different," he said slowly. I smiled faintly. "Different how?" "Confident," he said. "Composed, calm. You don't let things get to you the way you used to." I set down my cup, meeting his gaze. I realized something. I don't need to prove myself to anyone anymore. Not her. Not anyone. Let it go. Quietly. Strategically. He nodded slowly, understanding, appreciating the depth behind my words. "I saw what you did at the donation drive. The way you handled everything, it was impressive. Silent, precise. You didn't need to yell, didn't need confrontation. And she felt it. I let that settle. Let the weight of the quiet victory sink in. Exactly. Poetic justice doesn't need to be loud. It works best when subtle, when it teaches, without cruelty, without me stooping to her level." He poured himself coffee, eyes fixed on me. Icep's never really seen that side of you. The way you stayed composed and in control. I admire that. I nodded. I admire it too. Icep's new. Icep's earned. Every insult, every mockery she threw at me. I learned from it. I endured. I observed. And I acted when the time was right. He reached out, fingers brushing mine. And you came out of it, stronger. Not broken, not bitter, but empowered. I let a small smile curl. Yes, empowered, not by revenge alone, but by the understanding that my worth isn't set determined by her judgment or anyone else sets. My power comes from within, from observing, calculating, and choosing when to act. He nodded, visibly moved. Icep always seen you as kind, patient. But this is something else. You are formidable. I laughed softly, a quiet, deep laugh. Formidable. I like that. He smiled, a mix of admiration and relief. I feel like the balance in the house has shifted, not in a tense way, but naturally. You stir visible, respected. And I finally see it too. I felt a warmth in my chest, not prideful but serene. Finally, the person I had been beneath the bruises and mockery was recognized. I think, I said softly, the most important part is, I don't need to fight anymore. Isev acted, the universe delivered the lesson. And now, I can rise above it. He sipped his coffee, nodding. I can see that, and honestly, been glad for you, for us. I looked around the kitchen, the sunlight streaming through the windows, catching the edge of my reflection in the shiny countertop. I saw calm control, power, not loud, not aggressive, but undeniable. Do you think she understands? He asked quietly, hesitant. I paused, thinking of Hannah, the arrogance she carried, the vanity she prized, now replaced with quiet regret. Maybe, or maybe she had been still too blinded by her own ego. But it doesn't matter. Her journey isn't mine. Her consequences, her realization are hers to face. He nodded again. And you such free. Yes, I said. Free. From fear, from ridicule, from insignificance. I don't shrink anymore. I don't hide. I observe, I act when needed, and I rise above. He smiled, taking my hand. Icep always loved you, but seeing your quiet strength, I feel proud and safe, because you grown, and it's beautiful. I let his words wash over me, quiet, steady, sincere. I didn't need a trophy, a loud proclamation, or a display of power. The victory was internal, permanent, subtle, poetic. Do you remember, he said lightly, all those times she laughed at you, mocked your clothes, your cooking, your everything? I nodded, a shadow crossing my face for a moment. I do, and for a long time it hurt. Deeply, I questioned myself, my choices, even my worth. But not anymore, he said softly. Not anymore. You transformed that pain into something else. Strength, wisdom, patience, power. I smiled faintly. Yes, pain doesn't have to break you. It can teach you. And scars, they remind you that you survived, that you learned, that you rose above. He leaned closer, voice gentle, and Hannah left to confront herself, her vanity, her mistakes, her pride, and that is justice. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from malice, but from balance restored, natural, precise, undeniable. Yes, I whispered. She's learning quietly, slowly. Her arrogance can sustain itself forever. She see the consequences, and it will be karmic, subtle, effective, perfectly suited to her. He looked at me, eyes filled with respect and admiration. I feel like I'm seeing the real you now, not the version she overshadowed, the version that endured, calculated, and finally rose above. I breathed deeply, letting the warmth of the moment settle in. That's exactly it. Icep's risen above. Icep's won, not loudly, not publicly, but with undeniable quiet dignity. And finally, I feel whole. He smiled, gently squeezing my hand, and I am right here witnessing it. I looked out the window, the sunlight warming the room, calm, serenity, victory, all wrapped in quiet understanding. No smirks, no confrontation, no loud declarations, Just control regained, respect earned, dignity restored. I had endured, I had observed, I had acted. And now, I could live, freely, fully. Hannah would face her own reflection, her own consequences. And I would continue forward, unshaken, empowered, stronger than ever. For the first time in years, I felt unstoppable. Not because I had defeated her openly, not because I had yelled or exposed her, but because I had won, quietly. And that was everything. I sipped my coffee, eyes meeting my husband's, calm and assured. We didn't need to say more. The lesson was complete, the victory undeniable. I had risen above, and I would never look back.